Chapter 1. The Slap That Changed Everything. The crack of his palm against my cheek echoed through the marble halls of the royal court like thunder before a storm. I stumbled backward, my hand flying to my burning face as 200 pairs of eyes bore into me, some filled with disgust, others with pity, but most with the cold indifference I'd grown accustomed to over the past 3 years. The golden chandeliers above seemed to mock me with their brilliant light, casting shadows that danced across the polished floor like demons celebrating my humiliation. "You worthless little witch," my stepfather Marcus snarled, his voice carrying across the vast throne room. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you could hide what you are forever?" My wolf whimpered deep inside my chest, a sound so broken it made my heart fracture a little more. She'd been silent for months now, refusing to surface, refusing to shift, as if she too was ashamed of what we'd become. What I'd become. The accusations hung in the air like poison. Theft, witchcraft, conspiracy against the crown. All lies, all carefully crafted, by the man who'd married my mother for her pack lands, and spent every day since her death 3 years ago, making my life a living nightmare. "The evidence is clear," Marcus continued, pulling out a leather pouch that clinked with silver coins, found in her chambers. Along with these, he held up a collection of herbs and crystals that I'd never seen before in my life. "Dark magic, Your Majesty. She's been practicing forbidden arts right under our noses." My throat felt like sandpaper. I wanted to scream, to rage, to let my wolf tear through my skin and show them all what real power looked like. But she wouldn't come. She hadn't come for months. Not since the night I'd felt something ancient and terrifying stir within my blood, something that had nothing to do with my wolf, and everything to do with the silver birthmark that burned like fire across my left shoulder blade. The birthmark that Marcus somehow knew about. "Speak, girl," came a voice from the throne, cold and commanding. Not the Alpha King. He hadn't attended court in over a year, not since his mate died in that terrible accident. This was his beta, Lord Rothschild, a man whose cruelty was legendary even among the pack nobles. "What defense do you offer for these crimes?" I opened my mouth, but only a whisper came out. Another slap, harder this time, sent me crashing to my knees. The marble bit into my skin through my thin dress, and I tasted copper on my tongue. "Lies," Marcus roared. "She's been consorting with rogues, planning to poison the Alpha King's bloodline. The silver coins were payment for her treachery." The crowd murmured, a sound like angry wasps, and I felt the familiar crushing weight of their judgment. 3 years of this, 3 years of being called the Omega's daughter, the weak link, the stain on the Moonhaven Pack's reputation. My mother had been beloved, a healer with a gift for bringing peace to even the most savage wolves. But I was nothing. Less than nothing. Except for the fire that sometimes burned beneath my skin when I was angry. Except for the dreams that plagued me every full moon. Dreams of silver flames and ancient voices calling my name. Except for the way plants seemed to grow stronger when I touched them, and the way injured animals sought me out in the forest. All things that made Marcus's accusations seem almost possible. "The punishment for witchcraft is death," Lord Rothschild announced, and my blood turned to ice water. "However, given your youth and your mother's service to this pack, we are prepared to offer exile instead. You will be stripped of your pack status, marked as rogue, and banished from our territories forever. You have until sunset to gather your belongings and leave." Exile. The word hit me like a physical blow. To be packless was worse than death. It meant wandering alone, being hunted by every wolf who crossed your path, slowly going mad from the isolation until you either died or went feral. I looked up at Lord Rothschild through the curtain of my dark hair, and for just a moment, I let him see the rage burning in my eyes. His smile faltered slightly, as if he'd glimpsed something that wasn't quite wolf, wasn't quite human, but something else entirely. Something dangerous. "I accept," I whispered, my voice stronger than I felt, because I knew something they didn't. Exile might just be the freedom I needed to discover what I really was. and why Marcus was so desperate to get rid of me before I figured it out. But first, I had to survive long enough to reach the borderlands. As the guards moved forward to escort me out, I caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows behind the throne. Just for a second, I could have sworn I saw a pair of golden eyes watching me with an intensity that made my birthmark burn like molten silver. Someone was there, someone who'd witnessed everything. And somehow, I knew my real story was just beginning. Before we continue into the Savage Alpha King's dramatic entrance, I need you to experience this moment with me. Can you feel Lyra's desperation, her hidden power stirring beneath the surface? Because if you're already invested in her journey, if you're wondering what that birthmark really means, and who those golden eyes belong to, then you need to subscribe to Clarissa Romance Collections right now, if you haven't. Hit that notification bell, because this story is about to get intense, and you won't want to miss a single moment of what happens next. Trust me when I say, everything you think you know about Alpha Kings and forgotten prophecies is about to be shattered. Chapter 2. Touch her again, and you're dead. The silence that followed was deafening. Every breath in that massive throne room seemed to catch and hold, as if the very air had turned to stone. I felt it before I saw him, a presence so overwhelming, so primal, that my dormant wolf suddenly stirred for the first time in months, pressing against my ribs like she was trying to claw her way to the surface. Then he stepped into the light. Alpha King Daemon Blackthorn moved like liquid shadow given form, each step deliberate and predatory. 6 feet and 4 inches of pure lethal grace, wrapped in a black suit that probably cost more than most wolves made in a year. His dark hair was longer than fashion dictated, brushing his collar in waves that looked like he'd been running his hands through them. But it was his eyes that stole my breath, molten gold with flecks of amber, ancient and knowing and fixed directly on me. The crowd immediately dropped to their knees, but I remained frozen on the marble floor where Marcus had struck me, my hand still pressed to my burning cheek. Those golden eyes never wavered, never blinked, drinking in every detail of my face like he was memorizing it. "Your Majesty," Lord Rothschild stammered, clearly as shocked as the rest of us. "We weren't expecting." "No." Daemon's voice cut through the air like a blade, rich and dark, and carrying an authority that made every wolf in the room submit instinctively. "I imagine you weren't." He moved closer, and I caught his scent, pine and winter storms, and something wild that made my birthmark pulse with heat. My wolf whimpered again, but this time it wasn't from shame. This time it was from recognition, as if some part of her remembered something I'd forgotten. "Stand up, Lyra." My name on his lips sent electricity down my spine. How did he know my name? How did he know to find me here? I struggled to my feet on shaking legs, acutely aware that I looked like a disaster, my dark hair escaping its braid, my simple blue dress wrinkled and torn at the knee from falling, a red handprint blooming across my left cheek. But when I met his gaze, I didn't see pity or disgust. I saw something that looked suspiciously like fury. "Explain to me," he said softly, his voice carrying, despite its low tone, why I walk into my own court to find a member of my pack bleeding on my floor. Marcus cleared his throat, stepping forward with false confidence. "Your Majesty, the girl is a criminal. She's been practicing witchcraft, consorting with rogues." "I wasn't speaking to you." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Daemon's eyes flicked to Marcus with such cold menace that my stepfather actually took a step back. The Alpha King's power rolled off him in waves now, pressing down on everyone except, strangely, if anything, his presence made me feel steadier, like I was drawing strength from his rage. "Lyra," he said again, those golden eyes returning to mine, "tell me what happened." My throat worked uselessly for a moment. No one had asked for my side of the story. No one had cared enough to listen. But here was the most powerful wolf in our territory, asking me, just me, to speak. "I didn't do any of the things they're accusing me of," I whispered, then forced my voice stronger. "The evidence was planted. I've never seen those coins or herbs before in my life." "Lies," Marcus snarled, but a single look from Demon silenced him. "Continue." the Alpha King said to me, never breaking eye contact. My stepfather has been trying to get rid of me since my mother died. He wants our pack lands, but the will states they pass to me when I turn 21. My voice grew steadier with each word. That's in 3 months. Something flickered across Damon's expression. Approval, maybe, or satisfaction that I was finally fighting back. And the witchcraft accusations? This was where it got complicated. Because while I wasn't practicing dark magic, I couldn't deny that strange things happened around me, that sometimes I felt power coursing through my veins, that had nothing to do with my wolf, that my birthmark burned whenever I was emotional. I'm not a witch, I said carefully, but I'm different. I've always been different. Those golden eyes seemed to see straight through to my soul. Different how? Before I could answer, Marcus exploded. She's dangerous. The entire pack knows there's something wrong with her. Her wolf won't even surface. What kind of creature can't shift? She's cursed, Your Majesty. Cursed or demon-touched. Or... The sound that came from Damon's throat was barely human. A growl so deep and primal that every wolf in the room immediately bared their necks in submission. The lights flickered overhead, and I could have sworn I felt the marble beneath my feet vibrate. When he spoke, his voice was silk wrapped around steel. Touch her again, and you're dead. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus went white. Your Majesty, I don't understand. You struck her. Damon took a step forward, and even I could feel the lethal intent radiating from him. Now, you put your hands on her in violence, in my court, under my protection. She's nobody, Marcus protested desperately. Just some Omega's daughter. She, Damon said quietly, dangerously, is mine to protect. She has been since the day she was born, whether she knows it or not. The world tilted sideways. What did that mean? How could I have been under his protection? I'd never even seen him before today. Had I? But as I stared into those ancient golden eyes, I felt something stir in the deepest part of my memory. A fragment of a dream, maybe, or a half-remembered childhood story. A man with golden eyes and shadows at his back, promising my mother he would watch over me. Always. The exile order is rescinded, Damon announced to the court. Lara Moonhaven will remain in the pack under my personal protection. Anyone who threatens her, harms her, or spreads lies about her, will answer directly to me. He turned those molten eyes back to me, and this time I caught something else there, something that made my breath catch, and my heart pound. Possession. You're coming with me, he said, extending his hand. Not a request, a command wrapped in silk. I stared at his outstretched palm, knowing that taking it would change everything, that whatever I thought I knew about my life, my destiny, was about to be shattered completely. But as I looked around the court, at Marcus's furious face, at Lord Rothschild's confusion, at the crowd's mixture of fear and fascination, I realized I had nothing left to lose. And maybe, just maybe, everything to gain. I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine like a promise, warm and strong, and sending sparks of electricity up my arm. The moment our skin touched, my birthmark flared with silver fire, and I saw his eyes widen slightly. He felt it too. Whatever this connection was, whatever had drawn him here at exactly the right moment, he felt it too. Good girl, he murmured, so softly only I could hear. Then louder, to the court. We're leaving. Now. As he led me toward the massive oak doors, I couldn't resist one look back at Marcus. His face was twisted with rage, and something that looked suspiciously like fear. Because he knew, just as I was beginning to understand, that everything had just changed. The weak, powerless girl he'd spent 3 years trying to break was walking away under the protection of the most dangerous wolf in existence. And something told me she wasn't coming back the same person. Chapter 3. The Healer's Daughter and the Cursed King. His car was a sleek black beast that purred through the winding mountain roads like it owned them. I sat in the passenger seat, hyper-aware of every breath Damon took, every subtle shift of his hands on the steering wheel, every glance he cast my way through those impossibly long lashes. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken questions, until finally I couldn't bear it anymore. Why? The word escaped before I could stop it. Why what? His voice was softer now, without the lethal edge it had carried in the throne room. Why did you help me? Why do you care what happens to some nobody Omega's daughter? His hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles going white. You're not nobody, Lyra, and your mother, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Your mother was extraordinary. The familiar ache bloomed in my chest at the mention of her. 3 years, and it still felt like yesterday that I'd watched them lower her into the ground while Marcus stood beside me, already calculating how to claim what was hers. You knew her. It wasn't a question. Something in his tone, in the careful way he'd said her name, told me there was history there. Deep history. Alina was my father's healer, he said quietly. She saved his life more than once. But more than that, she was the only person who ever looked at our family and saw something worth saving instead of something to fear. I turned to study his profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the way shadows played across his cheekbones. Your family? The Blackthorns have always been different. Lyra, stronger yes, but also darker, more volatile. We're direct descendants of the first Alpha, and that bloodline comes with a price. My father struggled with it. My grandfather before him went completely feral and had to be put down by his own pack. The confession hung between us like a dangerous secret. I'd heard whispers about the royal bloodline, rumors that they weren't quite the same as other wolves, but I'd never imagined. And you? He glanced at me then, and for just a moment, I saw something raw and vulnerable flash across his features. I fight it every day. The rage, the hunger for violence, the need to dominate and control everything around me. Your mother used to make tea blends that helped calm the beast. She was the only one who understood that we're not monsters by choice. We're monsters by design. My heart clenched. I knew that feeling, that constant battle with something inside you that felt too big, too powerful, too dangerous to let loose. But hearing it from him, seeing the pain in those golden eyes, is that why you never married? Never took a queen? The laugh that escaped him was bitter. Who would want to bind themselves to a king who might snap and tear them apart in a moment of lost control? Better to remain alone than risk destroying someone innocent. Someone innocent. The words echoed in my mind as we turned onto a private road that wound through towering pines. He thought I was innocent. If only he knew about the fire that sometimes coursed through my veins, about the dreams that left me gasping and silver light bleeding from my fingertips. Tell me about your power, he said suddenly, as if reading my thoughts. I stiffened. I told you, I'm not a witch. I didn't say you were. His voice was patient, coaxing, but something happened when we touched back there. Your birthmark lit up like molten silver, and I felt. He trailed off, shaking his head. Felt what? Recognition. Like some part of me had been waiting for that touch my entire life. The admission sent heat spiraling through my chest, because I'd felt it too. That spark, that sense of completion I'd never experienced before. But admitting it felt dangerous, like opening a door I might not be able to close. My birthmark has always been strange, I said carefully. It burns when I'm emotional, glows sometimes when I'm angry or scared. And lately, I hesitated, then forced myself to continue. Lately I've been having dreams. Ancient voices calling my name, silver flames dancing around my skin. Plants bloom when I touch them, and injured animals seek me out like they know I can help them. Like your mother. No. The word came out sharp. Defensive. My mother was a healer. Pure, good, beloved by everyone. Whatever's inside me feels different, darker. Sometimes I think Marcus might be right, that I am cursed, or demon-touched, or stop. Damon's command was gentle but firm. Don't let his poison infect your thoughts. We pulled through ornate iron gates, and up a circular drive to a mansion that looked like something out of a Gothic fairy tale. All dark stone and soaring towers, with ivy creeping up the walls and gargoyles perched on the corners like silent sentinels. But it was the gardens that took my breath away. Even in the dying light of evening, I could see they were magnificent. Roses that seemed to glow with inner light, trees whose leaves shimmered silver, flowers that released perfume so intoxicating it made my head spin. "She designed them," Damon said softly, following my gaze. "Your mother. She said a king needed beauty around him to balance out all the darkness he carried inside." Tears pricked my eyes. I'd had no idea my mother had touched this place, had left her mark on something so beautiful. She came here often, the last few years before she died, said she was researching something important, something that might change everything. She spent hours in my library, poring over ancient texts and prophecies. Prophecies about what? He turned off the engine and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. About a child born of two bloodlines, one who would carry the silver flame of the ancients and the strength of the first wolves, one who would either save our kind or destroy us all. My blood turned to ice water. You think that's me? I think your mother believed it was. I think that's why Marcus is so desperate to get rid of you before your 21st birthday. Because that's when the power fully awakens. That's when you become either our salvation. He reached over and cupped my cheek with infinite gentleness, his thumb tracing the line of my cheekbone, or our doom. The touch sent fire racing through my veins, and I saw his eyes widen as silver light began to seep from my skin. Not just from the birthmark now, but everywhere he was touching me. "I'm scared," I whispered, the admission torn from somewhere deep inside. What if I can't control it? What if Marcus is right, and I really am dangerous? "Then we'll figure it out together," he murmured, his forehead coming to rest against mine. "You're not alone anymore, Lyra. Whatever you are, whatever power runs through your veins, you don't have to face it by yourself." For the first time in 3 years, I felt something I'd forgotten existed. Hope. But as we sat there in the growing darkness, silver light dancing between us like living things, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying, something that would test every bond between us and demand sacrifices I wasn't sure either of us was prepared to make. Because prophecies, I was beginning to understand, always came with a price. And the silver flame burning beneath my skin whispered that mine would be higher than most. Chapter 4. The prophecy written in silver fire. 3 days. 3 days of living in Damon's mansion like I belonged there, of waking up in silk sheets that cost more than my old house, of eating meals prepared by staff who looked at me with curious respect instead of the familiar disgust I'd grown accustomed to. 3 days of catching glimpses of the Alpha King in his study, poring over ancient texts with an intensity that made my birthmark pulse with sympathetic heat. And 3 nights of dreams that left me gasping, silver flames dancing behind my eyelids and voices whispering in languages I didn't recognize, but somehow understood. The time comes, child of 2 worlds, the silver flame must choose. On the 4th morning, I found him waiting for me in the garden, dressed in dark jeans and a black Henley that clung to his broad shoulders. His hair was mussed, like he'd been running his hands through it, and there were shadows under those golden eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "We need to go somewhere," he said without preamble. "There's something you need to see." An hour later, we were hiking through the deepest part of the Shadowmere forest, following an ancient path that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. The trees here were older than memory, their trunks so massive that 10 people holding hands couldn't encircle them. Moss hung from their branches like ethereal curtains, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with magic. "This place feels," I paused, trying to find the words for the sensation crawling over my skin, "alive." "It is." Damon's voice was reverent, careful. "This is the heart of our territory, the place where the first pack made their covenant with the moon goddess. It's been sacred for over 1,000 years. With every step deeper into the forest, I felt something stirring inside me. Not my wolf. She was still curled up tight, afraid to emerge, but something else, something that recognized this place like a homecoming. The silver light beneath my skin began to pulse in rhythm with our footsteps. "Damon," I whispered, catching his arm. "Something's happening." He turned, and I saw his pupils dilate as he took in the sight of me. Silver radiance was seeping through my clothes now, creating patterns across my skin that looked almost like ancient writing. "We're close," he breathed. "Just a little further." The path opened into a clearing that stole what was left of my breath. In the center stood a stone altar, carved from a single piece of black granite that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But it wasn't the altar that made my knees weak. It was the symbols surrounding it, hundreds of them, carved into standing stones that formed perfect concentric circles around the sacred space, and every single symbol was glowing with the same silver fire that burned beneath my skin. "What is this place?" I gasped. "The lunar sanctum." Damon's voice was hushed, awed. "The place where prophecies are born and destinies are revealed. Your mother brought me here the night before she died." That stopped me cold. "What?" "She knew she was dying, Lyra. The cancer had spread too far, too fast, for even her healing gifts to stop. But she made me promise." He ran a hand through his dark hair, the gesture achingly vulnerable. "She made me promise to bring you here, when the time was right, to show you what you really are." The silver light pouring from my skin was so bright now that it cast dancing shadows across the ancient stones, and as I watched in fascination and terror, those symbols began to respond, lighting up one by one like stars being born. "Read them," came a voice that wasn't Damon's. I spun around, but we were still alone in the clearing, yet the voice had been clear, feminine, achingly familiar. "Mom? Read them, my darling girl. It's time you knew the truth." My feet moved without my permission, carrying me toward the nearest stone circle. The symbols swam before my eyes for a moment, ancient runes that should have been meaningless to me. But as the silver fire in my veins burned brighter, they began to make sense, translating themselves in my mind like a language I'd always known. In the time of great darkness, when the old ways are forgotten and the packs turn against each other, a child will be born who carries the blood of two worlds, wolf and ancient, beast and light, destruction and salvation bound in mortal flesh. My hands were shaking as I moved to the next stone. She will bear the mark of the silver flame, and on her 21st year, the power of her ancestors will awaken. The moon herself will test her, and she will choose to unite the fractured packs under a single crown, or to burn them all to ash and begin again. "No," I whispered, backing away from the stone. "No, this isn't. I'm not." But Damon was there, his hands gentle but firm on my shoulders. "Keep reading, Lyra. You need to see all of it." The next stone made my blood run cold. "The child of the flame will be hunted by those who fear her power, betrayed by those who should love her. But when the Alpha King claims her as his own, when their souls bind in the ancient way, together they will either save our kind or watch it burn." "Claimed?" I turned to look at him, silver fire reflecting in his golden eyes. "It means," he said softly, "that you're my mate, Lyra, my true mate. The bond I've been feeling, the recognition, the way your power responds to my touch, it's the mating pull. It's been there since the moment you were born, waiting for you to be old enough to understand." The world tilted sideways. Mate. The word echoed in my mind like a struck bell, and suddenly so many things made sense. Why he'd been watching over me. Why his presence made me feel stronger. Why every cell in my body seemed to sing when he was near. "But I can't shift," I protested weakly. "What kind of mate can't even find her wolf?" "The kind whose wolf is waiting for her power to fully awaken," he said gently. "The kind who's been holding back because she knows that once she shifts, once she fully embraces what she is, there'll be no going back." I stumbled to the final stone, my vision blurring with unshed tears. The symbols here were different, more intricate, and they pulsed with an urgency that made my birthmark burn like molten silver. When the silver flame ignites, when the child takes her throne beside the Beast King, the old prophecy will be fulfilled. But beware, For there are those who would corrupt the flame, who would use her power to bring about the end of days. The greatest threat comes not from enemies, but from the darkness that lives within. The darkness within, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. What does that mean? But before Damon could answer, the forest around us erupted into chaos. Howls filled the air, not celebratory, but hunting howls, angry, desperate, and getting closer. "They've found us," Damon snarled, his body shifting into a protective stance between me and the tree line. I should have known Marcus wouldn't give up that easily. "What do we do?" I asked, though part of me already knew. The silver fire in my veins was no longer gentle. It was raging, demanding release, begging me to finally let it free. "We fight," he said simply. "And Lyra?" "Yeah? It's time to stop hiding from what you are. Your pack needs you. I need you. And those stones?" He gestured toward the glowing symbols. "They've been waiting 1,000 years for you to finally come home." As the first of our attackers burst from the tree line, rogues and pack members alike, their eyes wild with a madness I didn't understand, I felt something inside me finally snap. My wolf stirred, but she wasn't alone. Something ancient and terrible and beautiful rose with her, silver fire exploding from my skin like a supernova, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the power coursing through me. I was ready to use it. The prophecy was right about one thing: there would be no going back now. But as I stood in that sacred clearing with my mate at my side and silver flames dancing around us like living things, I realized I didn't want to go back. I wanted to go forward, into whatever destiny awaited the child of the silver flame. Chapter 5. The Shadowborn Returns. They came like a plague of shadows, pouring through the ancient trees with eyes that glowed, not with natural wolf fire, but with something sick and wrong. At the front of the pack ran Marcus, his face twisted with a rage so pure it made my newly awakened power recoil. But it wasn't just him. Elder Cornelius from the High Council, Beta Thompson from the Riverside Pack, even some faces I recognized from my own territory, wolves who'd known my mother, who'd smiled at me in the marketplace just days ago. All of them moving with that same unnatural coordination, that same wrongness that made my skin crawl. "What's wrong with them?" I gasped, silver fire crackling around my hands as I instinctively moved closer to Damon. His growl was low and dangerous. "They're not in control anymore. Someone's influencing them, corrupting their minds." "Who?" But I already knew. Deep in my bones, in the place where the ancient power pulsed, I could feel it, a darkness so old and malevolent, it made the air itself taste of decay. This wasn't just about Marcus wanting my inheritance anymore. This was something far, far worse. The Shadowborn Damon breathed, and I heard genuine fear in his voice for the first time. "They're supposed to be extinct. We wiped them out 3 centuries ago." "Well, clearly you missed a few," I snapped, then immediately felt bad for the sarcasm. Terror made me sharp-tongued. And this was terror like I'd never known. The corrupted wolves formed a loose circle around the sacred clearing, but they didn't attack. Not yet. Instead, they parted like a dark sea, and through their ranks walked a figure that made every instinct I possessed scream run. She looked like a woman in her 40s, elegant and poised in a way that spoke of old money and older power. Auburn hair swept back in a perfect chignon, emerald eyes that sparkled with intelligence and cruelty in equal measure. She wore a simple black dress that probably cost more than most people's cars, and she moved with the fluid grace of someone who'd never doubted her place in the world. But underneath the polished exterior, I could sense something writhing and hungry, something that wore human skin, but had never been human at all. "Lady Vivian Ashworth," Damon said, his voice carrying a note I'd never heard before. "Respect, yes, but also history. Complicated history." She smiled, and it was beautiful and terrible all at once. "Hello, Damon. You look well. Kingship suits you. I thought you were dead." "I was, for a while." Her emerald gaze shifted to me, and I felt like a mouse being studied by a particularly elegant cat. But death is so limiting, don't you think? Especially when there's unfinished business to attend to. The silver fire under my skin flared hotter, responding to the threat she represented, but instead of backing away, she stepped closer, breathing in deeply like she was savoring a fine wine. "Oh, you beautiful thing," she purred. "Do you have any idea how long I've been waiting for you? How many centuries I've searched for another child of the flame?" "Another?" I choked out. "Oh yes, darling, you're not the first. There was one born every few hundred years, each one more powerful than the last. And each one, eventually, mine." Her smile turned predatory. "The power you carry isn't just ancient, Lyra. It's addictive, intoxicating. And when properly harvested..." She gestured to the corrupted wolves surrounding us, and I understood with sick certainty what had happened to them. "You're feeding on them," I whispered, "draining their will, their essence, turning them into puppets." Such a quick mind. "Yes, but they're just appetizers. Really, wolves have so little true power compared to what runs through your veins. The silver flame of the ancients, pure and undiluted, that could sustain me for millennia." Damon stepped protectively in front of me, his body already beginning the subtle changes that preceded a shift. "You're insane if you think I'll let you touch her." "Oh, my dear boy." Vivienne's laugh was like crystal breaking. "You don't have a choice. Did you really think this was random? That Marcus stumbled onto the truth about her powers by accident?" My stepfather stepped forward at her gesture, and I saw with horror that his eyes held that same empty compliance as the others. But when he spoke, his voice was his own, which somehow made it worse. "I've been watching her for years," he said, and there was satisfaction in his tone that made me want to vomit, waiting for the signs to manifest, reporting back to Lady Vivienne every development. The way plants grew when she touched them, the silver light that sometimes bled from her skin when she was angry, even the way her wolf refused to surface, because she knew, on some instinctual level, what would happen when Lyra's full power awakened. "You killed my mother," I said, the words tearing out of me like shards of glass. His smile was reptilian. Alina was getting too close to the truth. All that research she was doing, those ancient texts she kept consulting, she was starting to piece together what you really were, and more importantly, what certain people might want to do with that power. I simply accelerated her timeline. The silver fire exploded out of me before I could stop it, racing across the clearing in waves that made the corrupted wolves whimper and back away. But Vivienne just laughed, raising her hands to let the flames wash over her harmlessly. "Magnificent," she breathed, "raw, untrained, but so very potent. You'll make a lovely addition to my collection, child." "The only collection you'll be joining is the one in hell," Damon snarled, and I felt his power rising to meet mine, darkness and light spiraling together in ways that should have been impossible. But Vivienne just smiled, that terrible, beautiful smile. "Oh, darling, you still don't understand, do you? This isn't about what you want, or what she wants. This is about what was always meant to be." She raised her hand, and I felt something wrap around my mind like chains of ice. The silver fire in my veins stuttered, dimmed, as her will pressed against mine. "You see, the prophecy your mother was so fond of. It's not complete. There are verses that were deliberately hidden, truths that would have changed everything, if your precious Elena had found them." Her mental grip tightened, and I felt my knees hit the sacred ground. "The child of the flame isn't meant to save anyone, Lyra. She's meant to be consumed, devoured. Her power transferred to one who knows how to use it properly." "Fight her," Damon roared, falling to his knees beside me as her influence tried to claim him too. "Lyra, you're stronger than this. The bond between us, use it, draw on my strength." I reached for him desperately, our fingers interlocking as Vivienne's mental assault intensified. The moment our skin touched, something electric passed between us, and I felt his strength flowing into me, just as mine flowed into him. The silver fire roared back to life, brighter than ever. But it was too late. The corrupted wolves were moving now, closing in from all sides, and at Vivienne's gesture, I saw more figures emerging from the forest, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all with those same empty eyes, all moving with that same unnatural coordination. We were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and the most powerful creature I'd ever encountered was bearing down on us, with centuries of hunger in her emerald eyes. "Don't fight it, darling," Vivienne crooned, her mental claws digging deeper into my consciousness. "The pain will be over soon. And your power, oh, your power will live forever. In me." As darkness closed in from all sides, and I felt my strength beginning to ebb, I realized with crystal clarity that this had all been planned. Every moment, every choice, every step that had led me to this sacred clearing. I was never meant to be the savior in this story. I was meant to be the sacrifice. But as Damon's hand squeezed mine and I felt the mating bond between us pulse with defiant fire, I made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted my power, they could have it. All of it. At once. Even if it killed me in the process. Chapter 6. Two halves of a shattered weapon. The explosion of silver fire that erupted from my core sent every corrupted wolf flying backward into the trees, their inhuman howls echoing through the sacred grove. Even Vivienne staggered, her perfect composure cracking for the first time as my unleashed power washed over her like a tidal wave of molten starlight. But the effort nearly killed me. I collapsed against the black granite altar, my body convulsing as silver flames danced wildly across my skin, no longer under my control. It felt like being burned alive from the inside out, every cell screaming as power I wasn't ready to wield tore through me like lightning through water. "Lyra," Damon's voice seemed to come from very far away, though I could feel his hands on my face, his warmth trying to anchor me to the world. "You have to pull it back. You're going to burn yourself out." "Can't," I gasped, silver fire bleeding from my eyes like tears. "Too much. It's too much." Through the chaos of unleashed power, I heard Vivienne's laughter, rich and delighted. "Oh, this is even better than I hoped. Look at you, darling. All that magnificent strength and no idea how to control it. You'll tear yourself apart long before I have to lift a finger." The corrupted wolves were regrouping, moving in that unnaturally synchronized way, but they kept their distance now. Even under Vivienne's influence, their primal instincts warned them away from the inferno I'd become. Which bought us time. Not much, but maybe enough. "Look at me," Damon commanded, his voice cutting through the roar of uncontrolled power. "Lyra, look at me." I forced my burning eyes to focus on his face, those golden irises steady and sure, even as silver flames reflected in their depths. His hands were on either side of my head now, his touch the only thing that didn't hurt, the only anchor in the storm of my awakening. "There you are," he murmured, and something in his tone, tender, proud, absolutely unafraid, made the wild power in my veins quiet slightly. "My brave, beautiful, terrifying mate. I don't know how to stop it," I whispered, and the admission felt like giving up. "It wants out, Damon. All of it. It's been caged for so long, and now it's free, and I don't know how to." "Then don't stop it." His words were soft, but they hit me like a physical blow. "Don't fight it. Don't try to cage it again. Just guide it. Channel it. Use me as your focus. I could hurt you. You won't." The certainty in his voice was absolute, unshakable. "Do you know what I felt the first time I saw you? Not in the court, but years ago, when you were just a child." I shook my head, not trusting my voice. "Peace." His thumbs traced gentle circles on my cheekbones, and I felt some of the chaotic energy in my chest settling, responding to his calm. For the first time in my life, the beast inside me went quiet, not suppressed, not fighting to break free, just still, like it recognized something in you that it had been waiting for. Around us, I could hear Vivienne rallying her forces, her voice sharp with command and growing impatience. We didn't have much time before they attacked again, but somehow that didn't seem to matter. Nothing mattered except the way Damon was looking at me, like I hung the moon and stars. The Blackthorn curse. I breathed, understanding flooding through me. Your family's rage, the violence, the need to dominate. It's not a curse at all, is it? No. His smile was soft, sad. It's the other half of what you are. The darkness to balance your light, the beast to ground your flame. My family has been waiting 300 years for the next child of fire to be born, not to serve her, but to complete her. The silver fire under my skin pulsed in recognition, and I felt it, the pull between us, that was more than attraction, deeper than love. It was harmony, balance, two halves of an ancient whole that had been sundered, and was finally being made right. That's why my wolf wouldn't come, I whispered. She was waiting for you, for your darkness to call to her. And that's why mine has been so hard to control. He was incomplete, searching for his other half. Damon leaned his forehead against mine, and I felt his breath against my lips. We're not just mates, Lyra. We're two parts of the same weapon, forged by the moon goddess herself to restore balance to our kind. Some weapon, I said with a shaky laugh. I can't even control my own power. Because you've been trying to do it alone. His hands slid down to cover mine, and I felt his strength flowing into me, dark and steady and absolutely unshakable. But you don't have to anymore. Let me help you carry it. Let me be your shadow, so you can be the light. The moment our fingers interlocked, everything changed. The wild, chaotic energy that had been tearing me apart suddenly found a pattern, a rhythm. It flowed from me into him and back again, creating a circuit of power that felt natural, right, like breathing. The silver fire was still there, still immense, but now it had a partner, his darkness wrapping around my light like a protective embrace. Better? He asked, though he already knew the answer from the way my body relaxed against his. Better. I looked up at him through silver-lit lashes, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt in control. Damon? Yeah? When we get out of this, and we will get out of this, I want you to show me everything. The royal archives, the history of our bloodlines, the real prophecies. I want to understand what we are, what we're meant to do together. His smile was fierce, proud, and tinged with something that looked like relief. And after that, I want you to teach me to be a queen. The words surprised me as much as they did him, but they felt right, true, because if we're going to save our kind from whatever Vivienne is planning, I need to be more than just a weapon. I need to be a leader. You already are, he murmured, pressing a soft kiss to my temple. You just haven't realized it yet. A howl echoed through the clearing, Vivienne's patience finally wearing thin. I could feel her corrupted army moving closer, no longer content to wait while we had our moment of connection. But I wasn't afraid anymore. One more thing, I said, pulling back to meet his eyes. That first night you brought me home, when you said I was yours to protect, did you mean it? With every breath in my body. Good. I stood, power flowing around me in controlled spirals of silver flame, no longer wild but purposeful, deadly. Because I'm about to do something incredibly stupid, and I need to know you'll catch me if I fall. His grin was all teeth and shadows. Always. As Vivienne's army closed in and I felt the ancient power singing in my veins, I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead filled me with fierce joy. I wasn't the sacrifice in this story after all. I was the storm. And it was time to remind everyone, including myself, exactly what that meant. Chapter 7. The Alpha King's Terrible Choice. The attack came from behind. Not from Vivienne's corrupted army, who were still circling like vultures, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Not from Marcus, whose empty eyes held nothing but malicious satisfaction. The attack came from the one person I'd allowed myself to trust completely, the one whose darkness I'd just welcomed into my very soul. Damon's hand closed around my throat like a steel vice. I'm sorry, he whispered, against my ear, his voice breaking with what sounded like genuine anguish. I'm so fucking sorry, Lyra. but I can't let you become what she was. The silver fire in my veins guttered like a candle in a hurricane, as his grip tightened. Not enough to kill me. Not yet, but enough to cut off the flow of power that had been singing through my blood just moments before. The connection between us, that perfect balance I'd thought was our salvation, turned against me like a blade between my ribs. "What?" I choked, clawing at his arm. "Damon, what are you doing?" "He's doing what he was always meant to do," Vivienne said, her voice rich with triumph as she glided closer. "What his bloodline was designed for. Did you really think the Blackthorns were cursed with darkness by accident, darling? They were created to be your natural predators, your perfect counterbalance, and when the time came, your willing executioners." The world tilted sideways, and I felt something precious and fragile shatter in my chest. The mating bond that had felt so real, so destined, cracked down the middle like ice in spring. The last child of fire. Damon's voice was hollow, haunted, but his grip never loosened. Serafina. She was my great-grandmother. Beautiful, powerful, convinced she was meant to save our kind from some great evil. Sound familiar? I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that my mind simply refused to process it. "She burned half the continent trying to purify it," he continued, and I could feel tears falling onto my hair. Convinced herself that anyone who opposed her was corrupted, tainted, in need of cleansing. By the time my great-grandfather finally worked up the courage to stop her, thousands were dead. Entire packs wiped from existence. "No." The word tore out of me like a sob. "No, I'm not her. I would never." That's what she said too. Vivienne's laugh was like glass breaking, right up until the end, when Damon's ancestor put a blade through her heart and watched her burn from the inside out. The Blackthorn family has been the failsafe ever since, bred to bond with the children of fire, to gain their trust, to be close enough to end them before they can fulfill their true purpose. Which is what? I managed to gasp. To burn it all down, of course. To cleanse the world with silver fire and start again. That's what the flame wants, darling. That's what it's always wanted. And you? She cupped my cheek with mock tenderness, while Damon held me immobile. You're just its latest vessel. I searched Damon's face desperately, looking for some sign that this was an act, a deception to fool Vivienne. But his golden eyes, the eyes I'd trusted, the eyes I'd fallen in love with, held nothing but grim resolution, and a pain so deep it made my heart break all over again. "The dreams you've been having," he said quietly. "The voices calling your name, telling you to embrace your power. That's not your ancestors, Lyra. That's the flame itself. It's alive, conscious, and it's been whispering poison in your ear since the moment you were born." "You're lying." But even as I said it, I could feel the truth of it resonating in my bones. The silver fire that had felt so right, so natural. There was something else there, something hungry and cold, and utterly without mercy. "Burn them," it whispered now, louder than it ever had before. "Burn them all. They betrayed you, hurt you, used you. Show them what real power looks like." "I can see it in your eyes," Vivienne breathed. Stepping so close I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with the underlying stench of decay. "The flame is calling to you now, isn't it? Telling you to make them pay. To show them what happens to those who dare threaten a goddess." The silver fire surged against Damon's restraints, and I felt his grip tighten reflexively, but something in his expression shifted. Surprise maybe, or recognition. "Fight it," he urged, his voice barely a whisper. "I know you can fight it. You're stronger than Serafina ever was. You have something she didn't." "What?" I gasped. "A choice." His thumb traced over my pulse point, and for just a moment, I felt an echo of our connection. Not the grand, destiny-driven bond I'd thought was real, but something smaller, more human, more real. She never saw the corruption until it was too late. But you can feel it, can't you? The wrongness of what it's asking you to do. He was right. Underneath the seductive whisper of unlimited power, I could sense something oily and wrong about the flame's hunger. It didn't want to save anyone. It wanted to devour, to consume, to reduce everything to ash, and rebuild it in its own twisted image. But acknowledging that didn't make the betrayal hurt any less. All of it? My voice came out broken, barely human. Everything between us was a lie? Not all of it. His grip loosened slightly, and I felt him shaking against my back. God help me, not all of it. What I feel for you, that's real, Lyra. But my duty is to kill me, if necessary. The words hung between us like a death sentence, and maybe they were. Because in the distance, I could hear howls rising on the night air, not from Vivienne's corrupted army, but from the direction of the pack lands, terrified howls, dying howls, and underneath it all, the crackle of flames. "What have you done?" I whispered, but I already knew, could already smell the smoke on the wind. "Insurance," Vivienne said with casual cruelty, a little demonstration of what unchecked power can do. "My pets are visiting every pack within a 50-mile radius, as we speak. Every family, every den, every gathering place. They'll keep burning until you either surrender yourself willingly, or until there's nothing left to save." The silver fire exploded out of me with such force that even Damon's supernatural strength couldn't contain it. He flew backward into one of the standing stones hard enough to crack the ancient granite, and I felt something vital tear between us. Not just the bond, but something deeper, something that might have been love if it had been given the chance to grow. "You want to see what the flame can do?" I snarled, silver radiance pouring from my skin like liquid starlight. "Let me show you." But as I raised my hands to unleash everything I had on the woman who'd orchestrated this nightmare, I felt it, the whisper at the edge of my consciousness, hungry and delighted. "Yes, burn her. Burn them all. Start with the one who dared to touch you, who dared to claim you. Show him what it means to betray a goddess." And for just a moment, one terrifying, illuminating moment, I wanted to. I wanted to watch Damon burn for what he'd done to me. Wanted to see Vivienne's perfect face melt like wax. Wanted to reduce this entire forest to ash and cinders, and build something new from the ruins. The realization hit me like cold water. This was how it started. This was how Serafina had fallen, not through evil or madness, but through pain, through betrayal, through the very human desire to make those who hurt her pay. I was standing at the exact same crossroads she had, with the flame whispering in my ear and power enough to remake the world flowing through my veins. The only question was, what was I going to choose? As Vivienne's laughter echoed through the clearing, and Damon struggled to his feet with blood streaming down his face, I realized that everything, every moment of this entire night, had been leading to this single decision. Save my people, and damn myself. Or save myself, and watch the world burn. The silver fire pulsed around me like a heartbeat, waiting for my answer. Chapter 8. I am not your sacrifice. The screams of my people dying in the distance made my decision for me. Not the flame's seductive whispers, not the rage burning in my chest, where Damon's betrayal had carved out my heart, not even the knowledge that embracing this power might damn my soul to the same fate as Serafina. It was a child's cry, high and terrified, carried on the wind from the direction of Moonhaven Village, a sound so pure and desperate that it cut through every other consideration like a blade. They were burning children. "No," I said quietly, and the silver fire around me shifted, changed, became something else entirely. Not the chaotic storm of before, not the seductive promise of ultimate power. This was controlled, purposeful, deadly. Yes, the flame hissed in my mind. Take the power, burn them all. Show them what happens when they threaten what is yours. But I wasn't listening to the flame anymore. I was listening to my mother's voice, a memory so clear it might have been whispered in my ear just moments ago. True strength, my darling girl, isn't the power to destroy. It's the wisdom to know when not to use it. You're making a mistake, Vivienne said, but for the first time, there was uncertainty in her voice. The flame will consume you from within, if you try to fight its nature. Seraphina thought she could control it too. I'm not Seraphina. I took a step forward, and the corrupted wolves whimpered, pressing back against the tree line, and you're not getting my power. The silver fire erupted from my skin, but instead of the wild explosion they were expecting, it formed shapes, wings of pure light that spread behind me like a phoenix rising. Ancient symbols blazed across my arms, not the chaotic scribbles of overwhelming power, but precise, deliberate marks that spoke of control, of purpose, of a will strong enough to bend the flame to my command, rather than the other way around. Impossible, Marcus breathed, his empty eyes wide with something that might have been fear. You want to know what makes me different from Seraphina? I asked, my voice carrying across the clearing with otherworldly resonance. She was alone. She had no one to ground her, no one to share the burden, no one to remind her what she was fighting for. I looked at Damon then, bloodied and broken against the shattered stone, and felt something twist in my chest. Not the bond, that was gone, severed by his betrayal, but something else, something that had nothing to do with destiny or prophecy or ancient magic. Even you, I whispered, and he flinched like I'd struck him. Even after what you've done, I won't let them hurt you, because that's the difference between power and wisdom, knowing when mercy is stronger than vengeance. The flame shrieked in protest, demanding blood, demanding retribution, but I held it in check with nothing more than sheer force of will and the memory of a woman who'd taught me that healing was always harder than hurting, but infinitely more important. You think your compassion makes you strong? Vivienne snarled, her perfect composure finally cracking. It makes you weak. Seraphina had the same foolish notions at first. Look how that ended. She fell because she listened to you. The realization hit me like lightning, sudden and absolute. You were there, weren't you? Whispering in her ear, stoking her rage, convincing her that mercy was weakness and destruction was justice. Vivienne's smile was all teeth and malice, guilty as charged. She was so easy to corrupt, all that power, and so little understanding of what it truly meant. But you? Her eyes glittered with hunger. You'll be even easier. The betrayal is fresh, the pain so raw, all it takes is one little push. She gestured, and I felt Damon cry out behind me. When I spun around, I saw her corrupted wolves advancing on him, their claws extended, and their eyes empty of everything but the need to kill. The flame roared to life, demanding I save him, demanding I unleash everything to protect what was mine. And that's when I understood the trap. Clever, I said, turning back to face Vivienne, with something like admiration. Make me choose between control and compassion, force me to either watch him die, or lose myself to the flame, trying to save him. It's a choice Seraphina faced 100 times, she purred, and she chose power every single time until there was nothing left of the woman she'd been. The same choice you're facing now. I felt the corrupted wolves closing in on Damon, felt him struggling to regain his feet, felt the silver fire in my veins begging to be set free to burn them all to ash. Instead, I did something that had never occurred to Seraphina. I shared it. Not with Damon. Our bond was broken, his betrayal too fresh for that kind of trust, but with every wolf within 100-mile radius, who wasn't corrupted by Vivienne's influence. Pack members, rogues, loners, even the feral ones who'd given up their humanity long ago. I opened my power like a door, and let them take what they needed. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. Silver light erupted from dozens of locations across the forest, as my people, and they were my people, I realized, in a way that had nothing to do with titles or bloodlines, drew on the flame to heal their wounds, to break free from Vivienne's mental influence, to fight back against the creatures that were ravaging their homes. But more than that, they could feel me, my will, my purpose, my absolute refusal to let the flame consume me or anyone else, and that certainty, that unshakable conviction, flowed through the connection I'd created, giving them strength they'd never possessed on their own. What have you done? Vivienne screamed, her perfect facade crumbling as she felt her control over the corrupted wolves beginning to slip. "Something Serafina never thought to try," I said simply. I trusted them. The wolves that had been advancing on Damon suddenly stopped, confusion replacing the empty hunger in their eyes. All across the forest, I could feel the same thing happening, minds clearing, wills reasserting themselves, Vivienne's influence being burned away by shared silver fire that carried not destruction, but hope. "You can't," she snarled, power crackling around her like black lightning. "The flame doesn't work that way. It consumes, it doesn't give." "Your flame, maybe." I took another step forward, wings of silver light spreading wider behind me. "But this belongs to my people now. All of them. And it's going to burn away every trace of your poison." She threw everything she had at me then. Centuries of accumulated power, the life force of hundreds of victims, darkness so deep and ancient, it made the shadows themselves seem bright by comparison. It washed over me like cold water. Because I wasn't standing alone anymore. Every wolf I'd shared my power with was standing with me, their strength flowing back through the connection I'd forged. Not just the strong ones, not just the alphas and betas, but the omegas too, the outcasts, the broken ones who'd been told they were worthless their entire lives. They were all part of the flame now, and the flame was part of them. "Impossible," Vivienne whispered, staring at me with something like awe. "You're supposed to burn out. The power is supposed to consume you." It would have, I admitted, feeling the truth of it in my bones. If I'd tried to hold it all myself, it would have killed me within minutes. But shared, I smiled, and for the first time in hours, it felt genuine. Shared, it's not a weapon at all, it's a gift. The ancient enemy who'd orchestrated so much pain, who'd corrupted and killed and fed on the suffering of my kind for centuries, took a step backward, then another. "This isn't over," she hissed. "There will be others like me. Other forces that want to use your people's power for their own ends." "I know," I said calmly, "and when they come, we'll be ready. All of us. Together." She opened her mouth to spit some final curse, but the words never came, because the silver fire I'd shared with my people was already burning through her stolen power, unraveling centuries of accumulated darkness like pulling threads from a tapestry. When it was over, when the ancient evil that had haunted our kind finally crumbled to ash and was scattered on the wind, I turned to face the aftermath of the most painful night of my life, and found Damon watching me with something like wonder in his golden eyes. "I felt it," he said softly, "through the pack bond, what you gave them, what you chose to become." He paused, struggling with words. "I felt what you could have done to me, what you had every right to do, but didn't," I finished. "But didn't." He took a careful step closer, and I saw hope flickering in his expression like a candle flame. "Lyra, I don't." The word came out sharper than I'd intended, and I saw him flinch. "What you did, what you were willing to do, I understand why. I even forgive you for it. But forgiveness isn't the same as trust." The hope in his eyes dimmed, but he nodded. "I know. Maybe someday," I said, and meant it. "But not today. Today I have a people to heal, and a kingdom to learn how to rule." As I walked away from him, from the altar where I'd almost lost myself to power and rage, I felt the flame settle deeper into my bones, not as a foreign invader anymore, but as part of me, part of all of us. I was no longer the weak Omega's daughter. I was no longer the weapon everyone wanted to use. I was Lyra Moonhaven, the Silver Flame, the Alpha Queen, who'd chosen her people over her own pain. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. Chapter 9. The Queen Who Chose Mercy. 3 months later, I stood on the balcony of the royal palace. My palace now, watching the sun set over territory that stretched as far as the eye could see, territory that was healing, slowly but surely, from centuries of corruption and fear. Below me, the gardens my mother had designed bloomed more vibrantly than ever before, fed by silver fire that had learned to nurture instead of destroy. Children played among the roses, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze like music. Wolves who'd been enemies just months ago worked side by side, rebuilding what had been lost, creating something new and beautiful from the ashes of the old. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the calm before another storm. "You're brooding again," came a familiar voice from the doorway behind me. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. Even now, even with all the walls I'd built between us, I could feel Damon's presence like sunlight on my skin. The mating bond might have been severed by his betrayal, but something deeper remained. Call it love, call it destiny, call it the simple recognition of two souls that were meant to complement each other. "I'm thinking," I corrected, pulling my silk shawl tighter around my shoulders. "There's a difference." "Is there?" He moved to stand beside me at the railing. "Careful not to touch. Always careful now. You've been doing a lot of that lately." "I'm a queen now. Thinking comes with the territory." He was quiet for a long moment, and I could feel him studying my profile in that way he had, like he was trying to memorize every curve and angle, like he was afraid I might disappear if he looked away. "You could have killed me that night," he said suddenly, his voice so soft I almost missed it, in the clearing. "When you realized what I was, what I'd been prepared to do, you had the power, the justification, the rage. You could have burned me to ash, without breaking stride." "Yes," I said simply. "Why didn't you?" The question hung between us like a challenge, and I found myself thinking about it for the 100th time since that night. Why hadn't I? It would have been so easy, so satisfying in the moment. The flame had certainly wanted me to. Every instinct I possessed had screamed for his blood. "Because," I said finally, "that's not who I choose to be." "Choose," he repeated, like the word held some special significance. "Not am. Choose to be." Every day. I turned to look at him then, really look at him, and felt that familiar flutter in my chest that I'd been trying so hard to ignore. Every moment, actually. The flame is still there, Damon, still whispering, still offering me easy solutions to complex problems, still telling me that mercy is weakness, and power is the only truth that matters. His golden eyes darkened with something that might have been guilt. "And yet you keep choosing differently." Someone very wise once told me that true strength isn't the power to destroy, it's the wisdom to know when not to use it. I smiled sadly. My mother. She knew even then what I might become, what I might have to choose between. She would be proud of you. The words hit me like a physical blow, not because they were cruel, but because they were kind. Because in his voice, I could hear the same pride, the same wonder, the same bone-deep love that had made his betrayal so devastating. "Would she?" I asked, voicing the fear that had been eating at me for months. "I've made so many hard choices, Damon. Banished wolves who couldn't accept the new order, executed those who tried to use the chaos for their own gain, formed alliances with packs who used to be our enemies. Sometimes I wonder if I'm becoming the very thing she tried to protect me from." "A leader?" His voice was gentle, understanding. "Someone willing to make the hard choices, so others don't have to? That's not corruption, Lyra. That's sacrifice." I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. But late at night, when the silver fire pulsed beneath my skin, and I felt the weight of 1,000 decisions pressing down on my shoulders, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking a razor's edge between salvation and damnation. "The council wants me to take a consort," I said suddenly, changing the subject before it could cut too deep. I felt him go very still beside me. "Do they?" "Someone politically advantageous. Someone who can help consolidate power, forge new alliances." I kept my voice carefully neutral, giving nothing away. "Lord Ashford's son has been mentioned. He's handsome, educated, comes from good bloodlines. And?" The word came out rougher than he probably intended. "And he's not you." The admission hung between us like a bridge. Neither of us was brave enough to cross. Because what was the point? He'd betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible, and I'd learned to rule without him. We were different people now than we'd been in that sacred clearing, shaped by months of separation and the weight of our respective responsibilities. But sometimes, in quiet moments like this, I remembered what it had felt like to be truly understood by another soul, to have someone see all of me, the light and the darkness, the strength and the fear, and choose to stay anyway, until he didn't. "I've been having dreams again," I said, needing to fill the silence with something, anything, different ones. Not the flame calling to me, but visions, I think, of what's coming. What kind of visions? War. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. Not here, not in our territory, but spreading from the south. Packs turning against each other, old grudges being awakened, fear and hatred consuming everything in their path, and at the center of it all, I shivered, pulling my shawl tighter. Something that feels like Vivienne, but older, hungrier. "You think there are others like her?" "I know there are." I turned to face him fully, and in the dying light, his face looked carved from marble, beautiful and remote and utterly untouchable. "The question is, when they come for what we've built here, when they try to tear apart everything we've fought to create, will we be strong enough to stop them?" It was a question that had been haunting me for weeks, but I realized as I asked it, that it wasn't really about external enemies at all. It was about us, about whether the bonds I'd forged with my people, the trust I'd built, the love I'd chosen over vengeance, would be enough to withstand whatever darkness was coming. And more than that, it was about whether a woman who'd learned to rule with compassion instead of fear could survive in a world that seemed determined to reward only the strongest, the most ruthless, the most willing to sacrifice others for their own gain. "Do you know what I see when I look at you now?" Damon asked suddenly, his voice so quiet I had to strain to hear it. "What?" "Everything I was raised to fear." His smile was sad, beautiful, devastating. "Everything I was taught to hunt and kill and protect the world from. And yet, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." The words hung between us like a confession, raw and honest and utterly heartbreaking, because they changed nothing. We were still broken, still separated by choices that couldn't be undone, and trust that might never be rebuilt. But they also changed everything, because they meant that somewhere beneath all the pain and betrayal and political necessity, the connection we'd once shared still existed, battered, maybe, scarred certainly, but not destroyed. Not yet. "The council meets tomorrow," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "They'll want an answer about the consort. And what will you tell them?" I looked out over my kingdom, my people, the life I'd built from the ashes of everything I'd once believed about myself, and felt the weight of 1,000 possible futures pressing down on my shoulders. "I don't know," I admitted, "but whatever I choose, it won't be because I'm afraid. It won't be because I'm trying to hold on to power, or please others, or avoid the hard conversations." I met his eyes, let him see every truth I'd been hiding. "It will be because it's what's best for them, for all of them. Even if it breaks your heart?" Even then, as the last light faded from the sky and the first stars began to appear, I found myself wondering what you would do in my position. If you had the power to reshape the world, but knew that every choice came with a price, would you choose love over duty, passion over politics, the man who betrayed you over the alliance that could save your people? Would you trust a heart that had been shattered and reformed, or would you build new walls and learn to rule alone? Because that's what it comes down to, isn't it? In the end, when all the prophecies have been fulfilled, and all the enemies have been defeated, we're still just people trying to figure out how to love and lead and live with the consequences of our choices. I am Lyra Moonhaven, the Silver Flame, the Alpha Queen, who chose mercy over vengeance and wisdom over power. But I'm also just a woman standing on a balcony, looking at the man who holds her heart, trying to decide if forgiveness is the same thing as foolishness. If this story has touched something deep inside you, if you felt the pull of destiny and the weight of impossible choices, then you need to subscribe to Clarissa Romance Collections right now. Hit that notification bell, because this is just the beginning of a journey that will test every boundary between love and duty, power and sacrifice, redemption and damnation. Because here, in this space we've created together, we tell stories that burn, stories that challenge, stories that ask the hard questions about what it really means to choose love in a world that seems determined to destroy it. And trust me when I say, you won't want to miss what happens next. The Silver Flame's story is far from over, and neither is her choice between the crown and the man who would kneel before it. Chapter 10, 72 Hours Until Darkness Falls. As Damon's footsteps faded into the palace corridors, and I stood alone beneath the star-drunk sky, I allowed myself one moment of weakness, one moment to close my eyes and imagine a world where prophecies were just stories, where power didn't come with impossible choices, where a woman could love a man without having to calculate the political cost. One moment to be just Lyra, not the Silver Flame, not the Alpha Queen, just a girl who missed the way it felt to be held by someone who saw all her broken pieces and called them beautiful. Then I opened my eyes, straightened my shoulders, and prepared to face whatever tomorrow would bring. I should have known better. The first sign something was wrong came from the gardens below, not a sound, the opposite of sound, a silence so complete, it felt like the world holding its breath, no insects chirping, no night birds calling, no rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. Even the children who'd been playing just moments before had vanished, leaving behind only their abandoned toys scattered across the moonlit paths. The second sign was the cold. Not the pleasant coolness of evening, but something deeper, something that seeped into my bones and made the silver fire in my veins gutter like candles in a hurricane. I'd felt cold like this only once before, in that sacred clearing when Vivienne had tried to drain my power. But Vivienne was dead. I'd watched her crumble to ash and blow away on the wind. Hadn't I? The third sign made my blood turn to ice water. Footsteps on the balcony behind me, not Damon's confident stride or the hurried shuffle of a servant. These were different, slow, deliberate, accompanied by the soft whisper of expensive fabric against stone. Footsteps that belonged to someone who had all the time in the world and knew exactly how to use it. Hello again, darling. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance, silver fire exploding from my skin in waves of protective radiance. But the figure standing in my doorway just smiled, completely unaffected by the power that could have reduced mountains to glass. She looked exactly as she had in the clearing, elegant, poised, beautiful, in a way that spoke of centuries spent perfecting the art of seeming human. Auburn hair swept back in that perfect chignon, emerald eyes sparkling with malicious intelligence, that same black dress that probably cost more than most wolves made in a lifetime. Lady Vivienne Ashworth, very much, not dead. Impossible, I breathed, but even as I said it, I knew it was true, could feel it in the way the shadows seemed to bend toward her, the way the very air grew thick and oppressive in her presence. Oh, my dear child. Her laugh was exactly as I remembered, crystal-breaking, beautiful and terrible all at once. Did you really think a little shared power and some righteous fury would be enough to destroy something like me? I who have walked this earth for over 2 millennia. I who have fed on the life force of gods themselves. She stepped onto the balcony proper, and I noticed with growing horror that she cast no reflection in the polished marble beneath her feet. Worse, wherever she walked, the very stones seemed to age and crack, as if her presence was draining the life from everything around her. You're dead, I said, pouring every ounce of authority I possessed into the words. I felt you die. I watched you burn. You watched a shell burn, a temporary vessel that had served its purpose. She moved closer, and I caught that familiar scent, expensive perfume layered over the unmistakable stench of decay. The real me, the essence that has survived the rise and fall of empires, was never in any danger. I simply stepped back and watched the show. My mind raced, trying to process the implications. If she'd never been truly threatened, if everything we'd fought for in that clearing had been nothing more than an elaborate performance. The other children of fire, I whispered, Serafina and the rest, you didn't corrupt them. You didn't need to. You just let them think they were winning, while you harvested their power piece by piece. Now you're beginning to understand. Her smile was proud, like a teacher whose student had finally grasped a particularly complex lesson. Each one thought they were the hero of their own story. Each one believed they could control the flame, use it for good, save their people from whatever threat I'd manufactured to motivate them. And each one burned themselves out trying, leaving me stronger than before. The silver fire in my veins pulsed with desperate urgency, but I held it in check. If she was right, if direct confrontation had never been the real threat, then attacking her now would only be giving her what she wanted. "What do you want?" I asked, instead, proud that my voice remained steady, despite the terror clawing at my chest. "What I've always wanted, what I came so close to achieving 3 months ago before your little display of creativity forced me to adjust my timeline." She paused at the railing, looking out over the kingdom I'd worked so hard to build, and her expression was almost wistful. "I want to go home, Lyra. I want to return to the realm where I was born, the place of shadow and starlight that was stolen from me so very long ago." "Then go," I said. "No one's stopping you." Her laughter this time was sharp enough to cut. "Oh, but someone is." The barriers between worlds were sealed centuries ago by the combined power of the first Alpha and his mate, a child of fire much like yourself. It would take that same combination of energies to break them down again. Understanding hit me like a physical blow. The mating bond. You need Damon and me to complete what was started so long ago. Yes, to channel your combined power, not into protecting this little world you've built, but into tearing open the veils between realities. She turned back to me, and for just a moment, her human mask slipped. Underneath was something ancient and hungry, and utterly without mercy. "One way or another, darling, you will give me what I need." "Never." "Oh, but you will, because unlike my previous approaches, this time I won't be targeting you directly." Her smile was pure malice wrapped in silk. "I'll be targeting them." She gestured toward the gardens below, toward the villages beyond the palace walls, toward the thousands of wolves who look to me for protection and guidance. "Every person you've shared your power with, every soul you've touched with that lovely silver flame of yours, they're all connected to you now, aren't they? One great beautiful web of light and life and hope." She leaned closer, and her breath was ice against my cheek, which means when I start draining them, when I begin feeding on their essence one by one, you'll feel every moment of their agony, every scream, every plea for mercy, every desperate prayer for their queen to save them. The ground beneath my feet seemed to tilt sideways. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" She pulled something from the folds of her dress, a small crystal vial filled with what looked like liquid shadow. "A single drop of this, introduced into the water supply of any settlement, and within hours, everyone who drinks it will begin to fade. Not die, mind you. Death would be a mercy. They'll simply waste away, their life force flowing to me drop by drop, while they remain conscious enough to know exactly what's happening to them." My hands were shaking now, silver fire crackling around my fingers in uncontrolled bursts. "How many?" "How many what, darling? How many do you have?" Her smile was answer enough. Enough for every major population center within 1,000 miles. Enough to reach every wolf you've ever touched with your power, every person who looks to you as their salvation. She tucked the vial away again, the gesture casual, almost bored, unless, of course, you'd prefer to simply give me what I want. "Open the way home for me, and I'll leave your precious little kingdom in peace." "And if I refuse?" "Then, in 72 hours, every person you've ever cared about will begin a very long, very slow journey toward becoming nothing more than empty shells, starting with the children. I think their life force is so much purer, so much more satisfying." The words hit me like physical blows, each one designed to find the exact place where my heart was most vulnerable. Because she was right, I had connected myself to my people, had shared my power and my essence with thousands of wolves across the territory. The thought of them suffering, of children withering away while I stood powerless to stop it. 72 hours, she repeated, already turning to go. Make your choice, darling. Save your people by giving me what I want, or watch them all die, slowly while clinging to your precious principles. She paused at the doorway, looking back over her shoulder with something that might have been genuine sympathy. Oh, and Lyra? Don't bother trying to warn them or evacuate them. The poison works on contact with anything I've touched. And I've been very busy these past few months. Food supplies, water sources, even the air in some of the more populated areas. It's all been prepared. With that, she was gone, vanishing into the shadows like she'd never been there at all. I stood alone on the balcony, the weight of an impossible choice settling around my shoulders like a shroud. Save my people by dooming potentially millions of others to whatever horror Vivienne would unleash on her home realm, or hold to my principles and watch everyone I'd sworn to protect die in agony. The silver fire pulsed beneath my skin, offering its familiar whisper of easy solutions. Burn everything, find her and tear her apart. Use your power to scour every trace of her influence from the world, no matter the cost. For a moment, just a moment, I was tempted. Then I heard it. A child's laughter from somewhere in the gardens below, quickly shushed by a worried parent who'd noticed the unnatural silence. One small sound in the darkness, but it was enough to remind me who I was, what I stood for, what I would never, ever become. I had 72 hours to find another way. 72 hours to prove that there was always a third option, always a path between damnation and despair. 72 hours to save everyone, or die trying. As I stood there beneath the star-drunk sky, feeling the weight of destiny pressing down on my shoulders once again, I couldn't help but wonder. When the darkness comes for everything you love, when the enemy holds all the cards and time is running out, when the only choices left seem to be between different kinds of destruction, what would you do? How far would you go to save the people who matter most? And at what point does the cost of victory become too high to bear? The silver flame was about to find out. And so, whether you knew it or not, were you.